Alright, so this glazing compound has had about 15 minutes now to dry, and you can see that it's doesn't come off. So we're going to wet sand it off. So I have some 400 grit 3M paper wrapped around my foam block, and some water, and I highly recommend wet sanding over dry sanding because your paper won't clog and you won't have to inhale a bunch of dust that you don't need to. And you don't need a lot of pressure, just very gentle pressure, and you can see that this material is coming off very, very quickly and very easily, which is one of the nice things about it. If we had used an epoxy product, it would be an absolute bear to sand this stuff, and there's absolutely no need to fill teeny tiny little scratches and pinholes with an epoxy material. The second step would be dealing with the edges of the foil. And this is what primarily causes whistling. One is surface finish, scratches, pinholes, all of that stuff is really bad. Or if you had purchased a foil that has a clear coat on it and the clear coat's been sprayed, then it could have an orange peel surface. That's not good either. But the trailing edge quality of your wings, your strut, and your fuselage are absolutely critical to prevent whistling. And I'll show you how to deal with that. So if your strut has a profile that looks like this, and we're at this trailing edge, and the trailing edge is rounded over, or the trailing edge is sharp, this can whistle like crazy, and it's not good to have a sharp trailing edge. It's not good from a safety perspective because carbon fiber will cut into you like a carbon fiber knife. And it's definitely not good from a whistling perspective. In order to prevent whistling, what you want to do is you want to sand the trailing edge square. So if we blow this area up, it's going to look like this. It's not going to be sharpened to a bevel, it's not going to be rounded, it's going to be square. And this distance could be something like a 0.5 millimeter to maybe 1 millimeter max. So how do we do that? The best way to do that is using a hard sanding block. I use these pieces of plastic, but you could use a hard piece of wood or some sort of composite material. But you want it hard, not flexible. You can wrap a piece of sandpaper around it, and I would recommend 320 for this, or 400. And you put this on the side, and I would recommend doing it wet sanding to suppress dust. And you keep this block at a 90-degree angle, and you simply sand the trailing edge of the strut until you get that 0.5 millimeter to a 1 millimeter wide trailing edge. And you have to be sure to maintain this flat and not to rock this block when you do it, in order to make sure that this is square and not rounded over. The leading edge is not as important in terms of whistling, really. It's the trailing edges that you're concerned with, and the leading edge should be a little bit rounded over. But again, you can use this kind of block, or you can use a foam block to treat the leading edge. In terms of the hydrofoil surfaces being smooth, it's actually much more important that the front half is perfectly smooth, because that's where you normally would have an early transition from laminar to turbulent flow, which would make your foil much draggier. So you really need to make sure that everything sort of from 2/3 to halfway back forward, that the front 2/3 or 1/2 of the foil is very, very smooth. A turbulent boundary layer has about 5 times the amount of drag as a laminar boundary layer. So if you trip a turbulent boundary layer on your surfaces early, it's really going to slow you down and cause a lot of vibrations.